Alright, there are 3 retirement mistakes I see from people all the time that mean you retire later than you should, that all your hard work goes to waste. Have you ever wondered why some people keep making these mistakes? Well look, there are 3 super simple ways I want to tell you in this video about how you can avoid these mistakes. And it can have an enormous impact on your life if you just take a small amount of time to get it sorted. I've also even included a download for mistake number 2 to get you started. And look, I get it, life is busy and the last thing you can be really bothered doing is ringing up all your various pension providers. Some you probably can't even remember the name because they were from that company in the 80s which were transferred about 3 times. But I promise you, if you can stick to it, it will probably be one of the best things you ever do. Now, the first mistake is to do with, how your pension works for you. So you might have heard, look, saving into your pension is great. All you need to do is to have it grow and just forget about it, as it's one of the most tax effective ways of doing this. And all you have to do is put it into your workplace scheme, set and forget. The problem with this though is that the default fund might not be right for you. And a lot of times the default strategy is what's called a lifestyle strategy. And this harks back to the days where at your selected retirement you used to purchase an annuity. So what these funds typically do, at the start of the journey you'd be in cash because for some reason they thought at the start of the journey if you experienced volatility you might stop contributing altogether. But most importantly, it transitions to cash at the end on the assumption that you're going to buy a guaranteed income for life, known as annuity. So let me quickly show you. Look, basically the closer you get to your retirement age, you typically move out of assets that you can get more growth on and into either cash or government bonds, ready for you to purchase that annuity at retirement. But can you think of the problem that might be here? Well, look, I'll tell you. If we consider very simply 2 options at retirement, one is where you buy a guaranteed income for life, the annuity, and the second is where you leave that money invested and draw down on the income. This is what's typically called flexi access drawdown. So your default option might not be right for your actual retirement plans. You might not want to buy an annuity, but look, to make matters worse, because of our interesting recent budget and because inflation has been quite high recently, a lot of the lower risk investments have actually been jam-packed with UK government bonds, which have generally had one of the worst times in history recently. So the drops that some people have been experienced, even in low risk funds, have been considerably higher than we'd normally expect. So what might you be missing if you're automatically in a fund which moves to really low investments or perhaps even to cash? You could be in a position where your pot is the most valuable it would ever be in monetary terms, but what you're invested in is not right for your plans. Let's say you've got £200,000 in a pension and for the last 3 years it's been moving into low risk investments. You could have lost growth each year just by being in a fund which automatically does this for you. That could be literally tens of thousands of pounds of lost growth compared to simply checking and make sure it's right for you. So number 1 is not knowing what you're invested in. Okay, so to fix this, you need to go online, and if your pension provider has online access, give them a call or request a pension statement with the details of your underlying fund and the fund switch options. No surprises to say, be prepared to wait a while for that to come back. But here's an example of how to do this via Aviva, and other providers are of course available. But the next mistake is one that a lot of people miss. If you were in your 20s, how much money did you have? Okay, so let's fast forward to being 40 now. Perhaps at this time of your life you had a mortgage and maybe kids. They're not expensive at all, are they? Anyway, so here's a question. Do you think over the next 30, perhaps 40 years of your retirement, your income needs will stay the same? So let's discuss this. Well, initially there was thought to be what's called a retirement smile to retirees' income patterns, where in the first years of retirement, they're likely to spend quite a bit more money as you're more active in your early years and you want to go on the big holidays, the places that you haven't been, and all the rest of it. Now, in the second phase of your retirement, you're likely to spend less money. So you're getting older, having done the things that you wanted to do in the earlier stages, a bit more of a sedentary lifestyle, spend a bit more time at home. And in the final stage, we just need to be aware that your expenses could rise again because you'll be less mobile and maybe need to consider things like cost of care. So we need to strike this balance right. You don't want to be at that point in your retirement and perhaps have a setback with your health, but also thinking, damn, I didn't do the things I wanted to do when I was younger. Well, does all this make sense, right? Well, the thing is, there's competing research on this topic. The IFS came out with research stating that actually retirement income patterns tend to remain flat after being adjusted for inflation, and that we shouldn't really expect drops down. So, are you confused? What's right for you? So mistake number 2 is not understanding your spending patterns before retiring. So let's be clear, after I've said all that, I actually think you should forget the data. You are not a data entry point. It's no good quoting the data, however broad, if you personally run out of money. My insight is that expenditure patterns are as unique as people, but people don't really change that much. It's quite rare that you have someone who's developed a spending pattern over 30 years, and then for that to completely change in retirement. If they weren't a big spender going into retirement, they might actually struggle to spend the money. Or the opposite, look, if you've got habits where you're overspending, we need to be really careful on the plan so that you stick to a budget in retirement that's right for you. So what we really need to do is just record your current income. So go through bank statements and then list essential needs, keeping the lights on, so things that you can't go without. And don't forget all those other things like haircuts, birthday presents, dental costs, all of that. Now discretionary, these are things that you could go without, but are important. So this might be a golf membership, season ticket, whatever it is. And make sure you think about the need for one-off expenditure, like perhaps replacing a car every 7 years, maybe home improvements. We need to be realistic here because most people don't consider this. And then finally, and also importantly, we need to add in things like lifestyle. So things that you maybe wanted to do, the holiday across the world, the bucket list things, whatever it might be for you. But there is perhaps some negotiation on this spending. And we should then be able to split this into needs and wants. And we can then map this against your pensions. And this is what professionals like myself do via what's called cash flow modeling. But you can even get started with a basic spreadsheet to give you an idea. Either way, you have to get a proper handle of this if you're going to have any idea on when you can retire. So in the link below, I've concluded an expenditure sheet so you can get started on that. But sorting these 2 mistakes is useless if you don't understand the next one. So if you think about retirement, there are some very unique areas that create this uncertainty. We don't know how long you're going to live. We don't know what inflation is going to be across retirement. And if prices double typically over a 30-year retirement and your income doesn't, look, you're going to be in trouble. We don't know what investment returns are going to be. And we don't know for sure what your spending pattern will be either. So, lots of uncertainty, right? And this is why William Sharpe called retirement income as the nastiest, hardest problem in finance. But here's the thing, you can deal with this. Everyone who retires has these problems. And life is never certain, but that's all right. The key thing is we have to intentionally plan and make adjustments as we go. But often what I see is just people not understanding what level of risk they will be most affected by. For example, if someone's got a defined benefit pension which provides a guaranteed income for life, and that's got a high degree of inflation protection, then they might have less concerns about running out of money. But they'll be more focused perhaps on how their income structure might meet their goals. They may not have enough for the earlier stages of retirement, but have plenty in the later stages when their state pension kicks in. Or the opposite, if someone just has a money purchase fund, which is flexible and they just plan on drawing down on their pot when they retire through Flexi Access Drawdown, they could be really worried about investment returns and the impact of how long they live, but less concerned on the structure of that income because they've got a degree of flexibility on when they choose to draw down on the fund. Okay, so now we're on to mistake number 3, which is not understanding the income structure. So what do I mean by this and how can you fix it? Well, look, we need to understand the type of income that you're going to have in retirement and then use that to understand what risks you need to watch out for. So we need to know what income's guaranteed, what is inflation protected already, what is flexible but perhaps subject to fluctuations. So firstly, to gather this information from your pension providers, if it's a defined benefit pension, you need to get a retirement quote on when you're planning to retire, check the level of inflation protection, and be aware that for defined benefit schemes, there's chances that different tranches of your pension could have different levels of inflation protection. So if it's defined contribution, where you're just putting in and it's a pot, then you need to obviously know what you're invested in. And also go onto the government website and get a state pension forecast so that you know what actually you'll get at state pension age. And from this, we should have an idea of how these pieces fit together. And I've included a link to admittedly some quite basic calculators that you can use as a starting point when looking at this. But once we've done that, we can have an honest assessment of where we are compared to where you want to be. Everyone's individual here. The ideal is that you have really enough security to be comfortable, but enough flexibility so you can live your ideal retirement. But look, if you haven't got on top of this already, rest assured, it's not just you. The main thing to remember is it will feel so good getting up every day, going to work, knowing at least you're on track towards the retirement you're working for. But perhaps you might be thinking, well, look, George, the thing is, I'm not even sure where to start with all this pension planning, and I'm a bit worried that I'm going to run out of money. Well, thankfully, I've listed here what most people miss when planning their retirement. And if you watch it, it goes over what you need to be aware of so that you can actually get fully on track. So I'd suggest giving that a watch.